Hello, dear friends. I want to share my thoughts with you. I deliberately chose such an intro. I demand my home in Ani to explain what action means, what a demand means. My ancestors come from Western Armenia. Of course, I consider these lands the lands of my ancestors, the home of my ancestors, where history took place. For millennia, in the formation of my family. What can I as a person do, as an individual? When you are not in a political position, when you do not represent the state as a structure, you can have your own thoughts. You can create platforms for your ideas to be promoted and realized, but you cannot make decisions, and those who represent other states on whom your decisions depend will not communicate with you. And does the decision of any nations depend solely on the decisions of other subjects of international law? Of course not. When there is no internal national will, when it is not created, or when it exists, and contrary to the thoughts of any representatives of a nation, citizens, or ethnic groups, issues are not resolved this way. I would like to touch upon a large number of comments, articles, thoughts, and even demonstrations that took place after the President of the United States. This is the President of the USA, not the President of Armenia, and I am not a US citizen. And the President of the United States acts exclusively in the interests of the United States as he sees them. And when on April 24th, 2025, as every year, each president makes a statement with an address to the Armenians, since there are millions of Armenians in America, and this is important both from an electoral point of view and regarding tradition, that on April 24th, every president of the United States speaks about the genocide. This time, President Donald Trump did not mention the word genocide. He used the Armenian equivalent, which the Armenians themselves proposed long ago. Matthew Gern. The Great Catastrophe, the Great Massacre, and so on. And here I read a wave of criticism, a huge number of different opinions on this issue. And you know, all of this takes me back to my broadcast about infantilism. Why should the President of the United States or the President of another country, which of course is of lesser importance, take on the role of the leader of Armenia or the head of the Armenian Church? There are several in the Armenian Church, or a representative of some large organization that represents the interests of all Armenians living outside of Armenia. Why should the President of the United States be more Armenian, for example, than the leaders of Armenia? Why do you expect this from the President of the USA? Political decisions, including such important ones as the President's speech and his address, and the President's address is scrutinized for every word and phrase, especially on such a sensitive topic as the Armenian genocide from 1615-1623. Why do you expect this address to be more pro-Armenian than the address of all Armenians? Who represent or could represent a part of the Armenian people? Because unfortunately, no. The Armenians have a world organization that has already been established, which could say, yes, I represent the interests of, for example, Western Armenians, or all Armenians. Such an organization does not exist, and you expect this from the President of the United States. What should the President of the United States say? Armenia, dear friends, of which I am not a citizen, just as I am not a citizen of the USA, Armenia is moving towards rapprochement with Turkey. What do you think? Do the leaders of states, the heads of countries, Armenia, the USA, communicate in any way? Definitely, there are diplomatic channels and informal channels. Of course, the leader of Armenia obviously cannot directly call Donald Trump and immediately get a response. But obviously, the leaders of Armenia have the ability to convey messages to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And so the leadership of Armenia is on a course to rapprochement with Turkey. What do you think? What messages are being conveyed to the State Department through informal connections in the United States? What do you think? Try to answer this question yourself, considering that I urge you to think, considering that Armenia is getting closer to Turkey, and the topic of genocide is not the most important foundation of Armenia's foreign policy, domestic, and political agenda. So guess what messages are being sent and what, after such messages, the president should obviously say it's logical. Now think, if genocide was the basis of the agenda, what messages would be sent? What kind of work would be done, right? It's logical to conclude, without having sources of information, what messages might be sent. That is, you assume, obviously, dear viewers, that the Armenian government, in its efforts to establish relations with Turkey, by saying that indirectly or partially directly, that it is necessary to move on, that genocide is not the crucial foundation of all Armenian policy, that is, with such a position, what do you assume the Armenian leadership is sending through formal and especially informal channels? There is no information. You say, use the term genocide. Please implement the arbitration decision of Woodrow Wilson. Yes, do you think this is how it happens? Are you young? Or do you not understand anything when you write your comments? So what do you expect from the donation? He must say what he does not want to. Armenia? Genocide is important to me as an individual. I do not hold any political positions. In Armenia, it is submissive. All my ancestors were killed. Their properties were taken. The churches they built were destroyed. As builders, not as those who participated directly as workers. The cemetery of my ancestors was destroyed. The fortresses of my ancestors who lived there were destroyed. Everything was destroyed. Most of my ancestors were killed. This is important to me. For me, it's number one. But I am not a politician. I do not represent all Armenians. I represent myself and share my thoughts with you. But decisions are made based on geopolitical developments. Armenia is now getting closer to Turkey. Armenia, under the legitimately elected leadership chosen by you, the citizens of Armenia, those of you who are watching, is moving. In any case, Armenia is moving towards rapprochement with Azerbaijan. Why is this happening? We have talked about this a million times. You can name a million reasons and leave a million unnamed, and you can propose a million theories. Here, in principle, there are no secrets for me. And in these conditions, you want Donald Trump to defend the interest of genocide, to defend the interests of the arbitration decision on Armenia's legitimate borders, relying on whom? On whom should he rely? On me as a geopolitical expert, not the least expert, who is in demand, or on the leaders of some public organizations in Lebanon, or in California, not all, or in Marseille? On whom should Donald Trump rely? There is the will of the citizens of Armenia. How else should Donald Trump regard this? There is the will of the citizens of Armenia. There is a legitimately elected government that conducts a certain policy. This policy does not involve making any territorial legal, financial, or any other claims against Turkey. Therefore, say thank you very much, Donald Trump, for also making this statement. Well, although he did this for the Armenians of the world, and he did it for the multi-million Armenian community in America, he would have said it anyway, and we must understand that this also affects the elections. Therefore, I find it very strange that Armenians take to the streets of US cities and protest, asking why the term genocide was not used. Guys, I don't understand you. They protest. It's not enough for you. You want a different Armenia with different politics, with different geopolitics. Focus on Armenia, make changes, but you are not doing that. And you want something from US President Donald Trump without doing anything? This is just a sham, an imitation. You show a vigorous activity that is not directed at anything, which, dear friends, is the result. What is the result in the end? You can gather 500,000 people in Washington, no doubt. There are many millions of Armenians in the United States. What next? What do you want from the president when the president clearly receives information about the political scene, the elite, the nation? What is it doing and where is it going? Now everything is moving towards a peace agreement. At least that's how it is seen. I don't know what kind of peace it will be, how it will all happen, and in what format. I don't see it and completely don't understand. It's not clear to me. More precisely, everything is clear to me, but I have my own vision. My own clear vision and clear understanding. Again, infantilism, again, misunderstanding. If you want, I am addressing those who truly want. If you want to change something in Armenia, it is necessary to engage with Armenia. Change can only happen in Armenia. You cannot change the politics of Argentina or Iran without having a foothold in Armenia. If Armenia does not exist, no matter how big or small it is, it might not exist at all. Everything depends on the effectiveness of actions. If you do not change Armenia, if you do not transform it, if you do not change yourself, if you do not implement effective matrices, depending on the purpose, you can implement an effective matrix for destruction. You can write a very good matrix where Armenia, for example, becomes a region of Turkey. Or it might not exist at all. Everything depends. When I talk about effectiveness, they can be different. No one decides any issues for anyone else. No one will pull chestnuts out of the fire for the Armenians. And what if the Armenians don't want either this fire or these chestnuts at all? If genocide is the fate of either, those who is trying to use this to come to power in Armenia, because for me, this is a question of my identity. For me, it is the meaning of life. But I saw many who went to lay flowers, for whom the motherland is Russia. Do you understand what the issue is? That's what's terrible. A huge number of people took to the streets, but I saw many in the photographs who see the future of Armenia only with Russia. Then why go out and mock the memory of the victims? If you don't offer anything better, you offer the other side of the coin. So it's bad. Thank you. Armenia is heading towards Turkey and Azerbaijan, into the Turkic world. And so badly it disappears with Russia. Do you understand that there is no third way from what you are proposing? If there is no strength, no understanding, no desire, if there is no core, neither I nor 10 people who will talk to you will ever lead you to anything. Any nation building is an elite that gathers, that comes to power, that writes the program. This is called the geopolitical matrix, and then achieves the results of this program. When none of these components are present, everything remains at the level of good, correct, and necessary conversations. And now I will explain to you once again why I work. Why do I go on air and spend a huge amount of time and effort on this informational work, dear friends? I do this for the youth, to create a chance for someone in the future to change something. You understand that with today's field, for example, I see very few prospects for work. Because what field? Whom to rely on? You, some of you, when this is logical, were, because there is a legally elected government, support the government. This is one block. Another part would sell their mother and father for Russia and cover it up with Armenian interests and are ready to do so. This is another part. The third part believes in swindlers, bandits, scoundrels, bastards, swindlers who create unclear movements. And you ask me, look how good they are. This is a deep unhealthiness. As of today, unhealthiness and loss of orientation in understanding reality. Dear friends, thank you. Do you think Armenia has no prospects? Armenia has enormous prospects. In the case that Armenia is managed by professionals, national India. Because in Armenia, a powerful army can be created. No one will threaten Armenia. An effective economy can be established in Armenia. Everything can be done. And not only in Armenia, in any country. This can be done in Azerbaijan, in Georgia. In general, there are no hopeless situations in any country. They never exist. There is simply a longer path. When you lose statehood, this path lengthens and you might disappear altogether. Because no one will give you the opportunity to develop your concept on the territory of other states. Even on your own territory, for small and medium-sized countries, they are not given the opportunity to develop their concept. Often there is no concept to develop. This is what I want to tell you, friends. Think about what I am saying. Yes, I am involved in educating the youth because I believe in them. I believe in this future. Of course, I put effort into this. Time to convey the vision, knowledge, and understanding that will later shape the future. That's what I am doing. I don't live in illusions. I have no illusions that I will address, and several million people will watch me. Well, the views on my channel reach millions in a month. 1 million Armenians will watch me and something will change. Either I will say this is so or it is not. Everything that has only an educational purpose. I am a realist, I am a pragmatist, I fully understand what an address can lead to. Of course, it's a matter of creating an informational basis. With social technology, you hear, you orient yourself, you understand how to live in the future, how to shape the future that doesn't exist now. Do you want to change something? Focus on your own country. That is, it doesn't matter what this country is called. It could be dealing with China. It could be called India. But there are established systems where already the size of economic and military power determines the future. That's the point. I'm just amazed by the childish reactions. And the continuation cannot already be from the end, the formal end of the genocide, because I don't know when it ended. And after 1923, Armenians were Armenized, killed after 1923. And in 1937, in central Turkey, in Dersim, they did this. I don't know when it ended. Let's put it this way. After the massive, total 8-year-long destruction of the army, 102 years have already passed. This I'm addressing everyone. Act using the same methods. This is called the method of a blind kitten in a room where the light is turned off. I am now talking about Armenian movements, about the Armenian National Committee of America, a powerful lobby, about the Armenian Assembly of America, about churches, about everything. Either create the appearance that you are doing something. And I see the real state of very deep ignorance, a lack of understanding of the situation, a lack of knowledge, neither of geopolitics nor of their own history. Now, do you understand why I am working? so that those who are capable of learning and thinking can come to some conclusions and at least understand something. Only for this, do you think I believe that my calls will create a willpower, an army, and professionals will be brought from all over the world, right? What are you talking about? I often talk to many so-called specialists who hold very high positions. It frightens me. I will tell you who the main enemies of the Armenians are. Not the Turks, not the Azerbaijanis, by no means. They have their own position, they have their own program. The main enemies of the Armenians are fools and idiots. These are poorly educated people who are 30, 40 years behind. I am talking about all specialists, diplomats, military personnel around the world and in Armenia, politicians and managers. Often these are people who understand nothing or are at the level of understanding that was already inadequate in 1970 or 80, or the 80s. Do you understand what's happening? That's why the situation is like this. Neither the Turks nor the Azerbaijanis are enemies, and certainly not other nations. Armenian unprofessionalism to Armenians. Those who make decisions, because Armenians have hundreds of thousands of professionals around the world. Wrong priorities, lack of a development plan worldwide, in all organizations, for everyone. These are the main enemies of the Armenians. Betrayal, definitely betrayal. You know, in the last 30 years, Armenians have failed in many things. Since this is classified information, I will give you an example. Do you know why many things didn't work out to achieve success, including on a macro level? Because Armenians themselves secretly asked for certain things not to be done. You simply don't know anything about this. Armenians themselves have been breaking the Armenian concept all this time. With such, guys, no enemies are needed. And obviously, dear friends, similar things happened in the Middle Ages. Similar things occurred in ancient times, but on a smaller scale. That's the point. That's the point, dear friends. Therefore, the main problems are not only with Armenians, but with many peoples. Systemic problems, which are the main enemies, are not professionals and traitors. And for Armenians, the main problem is not professionals and traitors. Thank you. These are the main enemies of Armenians, not the Turks and not the Azerbaijanis. None of what happened would have happened if the problems were solved. With traitors and non-professionals. With poorly educated people, with charlatans and methods. Think about it. Do you want to be different? Learn and unite. Work and think. Live up to your ancestors and the best representatives who, in every country in the world, make up the professional, technical, scientific, economic, and military elite. Well, except for Azerbaijan and Pakistan. Subtitles created. Actually, think about it. And somewhere there are very few left, so we can't talk about that there. Yes. There you go. I keep trying to be detailed and as precise as possible, not to speak in a vague manner. So, dear friends, this is what you should know and think about. Think. Take off the glasses that prevent you from seeing. I would use another expression, but not everyone is so well versed in this matter. I will also touch upon the Russian language. To know, I would say, take off the blinders. These are two leather plates over the eyes that prevent the horse from being distracted, hinder the horse's vision. There. And many will write, why are you speaking in Russian? Yes, because when I speak in English, I'm asked to speak in Russian. When I speak in Armenian, I'm told to write in Russian. When I speak in Russian, they ask, why don't you speak in Armenian? Do you think I already translate all the broadcasts? Do you think I can be the first on earth to speak in 12 languages simultaneously in one broadcast, my friends? Do you understand how little logic there is? If I were to react to all the nonsense that's written about why I do this or that, why in this language or that one, well, then it's not worth doing the broadcast at all. My friends, consider that the main problem of Armenians Why Armenians have reached today is traitors and unprofessionals, imitators and profaners, those for whom family and its financial interests are more important than the family and everyone else. If you are not a team, you will lose to the weakest and dumbest who are capable of organizing themselves into a team. Look, for example, at how successful he is despite all his global problems and uncertain future, an unknown end, how successful he is. Ilham Aliyev. Because what he encountered as a designer, as a person, he was able to mold into a team. Yes, he has energy resources, he has a favorable location compared to Armenia, he has allies, but he was able to mold it. Others before him couldn't achieve this. Do you understand what I'm saying? The Armenians have a huge amount of resources, where there's no need to turn to America or France. And when you become strong and successful, when they understand your clarity, understand your program, then they will come to help you because you will be interesting. They will want to include you. But when everyone has their own opinion, when the nation seems to be fighting for the recognition of the genocide, yet under the table does everything to ensure nothing is resolved on this issue, what can be said then? Then the nation deserves what it has. As of today, if you don't want to deserve what you have, change it. If you don't want to change, you will receive even worse. And you will live in what you are living in. It's always a choice. It's a choice. And no one will pull you out. It's not a matter of an individual like Napoleon coming and saving everyone, solving something. No, it's a collective national consciousness. For this, there must be an elite that can solve these issues. This is what should be formed in the future, and everything depends on the Lord. Such elites that will take care of Armenia, that will make Armenia into Armenia, Armenians into Armenians. This is 1,000,000 times more important than fighting with someone or being in confrontation. You need to talk to everyone. You see, when you look at the situation through a narrow perspective, many of you don't get anywhere at all. You don't want to learn and you get confused. In every way possible, by creating platforms, information bases, I try as much as possible through the channel, well soon already. The channel will have 100,000 to pull you out of stagnation. It's very difficult, it turns out. I will continue anyway. I never had illusions, hopes, never. I look at everything very pragmatically. I am fulfilling my duty to my ancestors. That's what I'm doing. For example, so you understand the motivation, what other motivation could there be? If everything I am doing, if I weren't doing it, I would be better off. Imagine I worked for different countries in high positions. And what do you think? When I was the only one who put Ararat as an avatar. Yes, I had an explanation that this is a place for everyone, where my son was present, and when I openly defended Armenian interests, and I harmed myself for your sake. But also for your ancestors, of course, and for you as well. This is so you understand how, in my situation, my position differs from others. Those who want to rise on the Armenian topic, in my case, it only means going down, only harming myself. My whole life confirms this. When you haven't achieved anything, or have achieved what you want. To get somewhere, you catch on Armenian little trains. You grow up in the Armenian environment. In my case, I was always outside of this environment. For me, any reference to the Armenian topic is a loss. That is, in my case, the motivations are completely different. In my case, it is duty, it is morality. It is something completely different. It is the memory of ancestors of my great country that has been destroyed. Western Armenia, which the current Armenia resembles less and less, is becoming similar to. Even before the genocide, it was less similar, and now not at all. Because there was simply a motor and completely different civilizational norms. Although it was also occupied, Here is Russia, and there is Turkey, and to the south Persia. All of this had an influence. The Armenian people are like a broken cup. It is necessary to forge anew, to glue together what exists now. It's unclear on what foundation. It's already impossible. Everything can be done. Armenia can reach any prospects, achieve any results, but not in the way I described in this broadcast. Everything needs to be changed differently, if there is such a desire, if no one needs it. We have the example of Turkey. The Turks are the same Armenians, only speaking the Turkish language and having adopted Islam. If this is the future, then you will merge with the Turks, and the remaining Armenians in the diaspora will assimilate. Maybe that's the point. Because if people like me are few and a minority, then that's the point. Think about it. Who you are, why you are, where you are going. Yes, I read these articles with criticism of Trump. I am just amazed. If with such an understanding of the world you will judge, and these are the ones who try to write articles and think about realities, then it's definitely a road to nowhere. It's a road to disappearance. It's necessary to be pragmatists and realists. That's it. Thank you. All the best. See you next time. I'm going to work. Thank you.